This is the Chiefs official podcast network.
Take advantage of the day. When you get an opportunity in this game, you make a play. The playmakers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Touchdown, Kansas City! The Chiefs are right in the thick of it, baby!
And hello, everyone, and hello, everybody in the Chiefs Kingdom. Mitch Holthus with you, the voice of the Chiefs, along with the man we know as the Shop, or Barbershop, or the Spider-Man. That is 10-year NFL veteran Shawn Barber. And this edition of Defending the Kingdom is going to feature the role of the tight end. And yep, buckle up for this one, because this is going to be a good discussion, because the National Football League has changed in this regard also dramatically. Over the last 10, 15 years, Tony Gonzalez kind of got things started. But Barbershop, the tight end position, and we know in Kansas City how important it is, because the best tight end in the National Football League is part of the Super Bowl 54 champions in Travis Kelce.
Yeah, we talk about that position of the tight end. One of my good friends here in Kansas City is Billy Baber, and he was a former tight end. He was, the third-string tight end behind Tony. He said he's the second-string tight end behind Tony Gonzalez, but he also was behind Jason Dunn.
Oh, yeah.
It was our
it was
man.
One other dude he was behind for a while, so don't let Babes fool you.
Yeah, but one thing, when we talk football, he always designates, tell me this, does the team have a great tight end? Mm-hmm. Because if the team has a great tight end, there's no excuse their offense shouldn't move the ball. And I asked him about that. What do you mean? He said, man, the tight end, we control the safety. We control the linebackers. We can displace people. We can make you move places by, having a move tight end, motion tight end. We designate. We can make you, show us your hand before you're willing on blitzes and things like that. So he said, man, if I got a great tight end, and it limits, the freedom of your safety, the freedom of your linebackers to just freelance around, because they're worried about getting locked out by the tight end, getting cut out of a gap, getting cut out of a hole, or getting beat down a seam for a big gain. It really limits a lot of the disguises that a defense can do. And he says that's a quarterback's best friend. Some people say it's the running game, but if you ask some former tight ends, they think a great tight end is a quarterback's best friend.
The adjective, though, that you use is great tight end. 30, we got some great tight ends in this league, but about 28 of them are searching for the next great tight end. There's some good tight ends. There's some average tight ends. But let's talk about the importance of the tight end position, and then we're going to come back to your great tight end in the National Football League, which we know Travis Kelce is one of them. By the way, we appreciate everybody working out to our Defending the Kingdom podcast. I find more and more people that work. Why do they work out to this?
Man, this gets you right, man. Get your mind right. We talk about mindset. We talk about mental toughness. We talk about all the things that when you're going on that, you're trying to make that 7-minute mile on the bike. Sometimes you get about halfway through and you're looking for some motivation, and you hear the voice of Kansas City telling you how your team is going to refit the backpack and packing up for a new season and getting back at it. It kind of gets your mind right to finish off that mile. So I appreciate that, man. I know the guys that are working out, listening to our podcast, they appreciate the way we speak the truth.
Yeah, this is the theme, refitting the backpack for the next climb up the mountain. A dude named Chris McGowan listens to us and works out. Also a guy named Jim Mullenix. I've had different people come up and go, we work out too. You mentioned the guy in St. Louis that works out. Well, hey, we also work out to it. So, hey, stay on it. Get your cardio up. But the first quarter of this Defending the Kingdom tight end is I want to bring up some stats here. Okay. Just bear with me a second. Lamar Jackson of Baltimore. We all know the NFL MVP in the 2019 season. Phenomenal year. 42% of his passing attempts were to tight ends. 43% of his completions were to Ravens tight ends. We know who they are. It's a good crew. Carson Wentz of Philadelphia. Doug Peterson, former Chiefs offensive coordinator, head coach of the Eagles. Wentz, of his 601 attempts, 38% went to tight ends. Almost 40% of his completions went to tight ends. Let's just keep going here. Derek Carr in the division for now, 513 attempts, 30.4 attempts. A percentage of his attempts went to tight ends. Almost 34% of his completions. Oh, there's a dude named Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't know if you've heard of him. With San Francisco, right? He's got Kittle, the great tight end you talked about. Jimmy Garoppolo, 476 attempts last season in the regular season. 28% of his attempts were to tight ends, 31% of his completions. Next on the list, Patrick Mahomes. Out of his 484 attempts, 26.9% of his attempts went to tight ends, most of those, if not all, to Kelce, and 29.5% of his completions went to mostly Kelce. Some Blake Bell, a couple of Yelders in there. Tom Brady, here's where it gets interesting, and then I'm going to get your thoughts. Tom Brady, 613 attempts, 129 more than Patrick Mahomes. Mahomes was hurt, missed 2.5 games. 8.5% of Brady's attempts went to tight ends. 9.9% of his completions. Now, that is down almost 50% from 2018 because we knew he had Gronkowski. Okay? So here we are, the tight end and what he means to these quarterbacks and these offenses, and no one more so than Lamar Jackson of the Ravens.
Well, when you break down those stats and the teams, the personnel you talked about, let's see what the common thread is. The common thread is the skill level of the tight ends on those teams that were good. They create automatic mismatches. It's automatic in the favor of the offense. Whether it's the size of the tight end, the route running ability, the hands, no matter if you cover them with the linebacker or cover them with a safety, those guys are still open. You can't. They're uncoverable. You hope to get enough pressure on the quarterback so that the pass is thrown a little bit off target. You hope to bat the ball down like Chris Jones did phenomenally in the Super Bowl to prevent the completion. But those guys are almost uncoverable within the new age of the offense. You can't put hands. You can't grab them. Can't chuck them. Even once they catch you, you got to figure out how to hit them without hitting them in the head or too low in the legs. So those guys are just they create such a mismatch. They create such a problem for a defensive philosophy when you're trying to make sure that you shore up the gaps for the running game. You have the proper consistency and the edge on the defense so that the perimeter run is taken care of. You got certain quarterbacks. You got deep threats from the receivers. So when you're checking the boxes of what you got to stop, usually the tight end position is not one of your first or second priorities. You're talking about defensively what you got to stop. And what these offenses had done, the San Francisco 49ers, the Ravens, our offense, the Eagles, since it's not a high priority for the defense to stop these positions, they've highlighted that position, and they've made that their cornerstone, their fundamental, one of the pillars of the offense here in Kansas City and the other offense you named, is to get to that tight end position, expose that mismatch, and make sure that you make that defense pay for it over and over again.
Now, you saw this start to change as we close out the first quarter of this podcast. We're going to get into Kelce and the division in a second because this division has some good tight ends.
Yes, it does.
Okay. But you saw it. About the time you came into the league was a time it was starting to change. Gonzalez had taken off in the late 90s. It's the basketball guy that's become the great tight end who can run every route on the tree. He can run the 7 route. He can run the corner. He can run the post. He can run the dig. Same with Jimmy Graham. Played college basketball at Miami of Florida. You started to see it change. Now I would tell you it's gone to even 2 more levels higher than I think when you played.
Yeah, you named some guys, had me thinking. Remember Jeremy Shockey for the Giants, Algie Crumpler for the Falcons. There were some teams that had some tight ends that created problems, but it was just one, right? It was one here, one there. But now we've seen like everybody is featured almost to a point now where the Ravens actually put 3 tight ends that are all mismatch problem, all create different sets of problems from a defensive standpoint, and all can go vertical. All have great hands. All they can block so well. So the second you take a back step, thinking it's a pass, and now they all up in your chest blocking you 5-6 yards down the field, creating these vertical seams for the running back. The more and more I think about it, the more and more I think Billy was right. The best friend of a quarterback might be the tight end instead of the running back.
It's a great point, and I don't want to give Baber credit, but I will here. Here's the deal. There's so many teams right now that want to help their quarterback. We know who you are, all right? You can fill in the blank and talk amongst yourselves. Every one of those teams is scrambling to find the next either really good or great tight end. Because when you said great tight end, you narrowed that list down. But the quarterbacks who are struggling need these tight ends. All right, the second quarter of our podcast, Defending the Kingdom, as we refit the backpack and get ready for the next climb, focusing on the tight end position in the National Football League. And with the Chiefs, they have the best in the business in Travis Kelce. as good a year as he had, I still think he maybe was underrated, even within the kingdom. We started to take him for granted. Just listen to this. He led the league for tight ends in yards, almost 1,229 yards on 97 catches. By far the most yards and catches of any tight end in the National Football League. Last year, only Kittle surpassed him. And Kittle set an all-time NFL record. He was injured this year for a good part of it. In the playoffs, Travis Kelce was targeted by Patrick Mahomes 22 times in the 3 games. 19 receptions out of 22 targets. That's with him covered and draped. 207 yards, 4 touchdowns, including the hat trick against Houston. You go back and listen to the play-by-play. That's when I said he's gargling in the sweet nectar of the end zone. Travis Kelce, to me, was phenomenal last year. I remember him on July the 22nd, showing up with the rookies and with Pat Mahomes, acting like a free agent trying to make the team. Shop, he never stopped. He played through injuries. He didn't miss any time. He set himself up by far, without argument, as the best tight end in the NFL.
Yeah, it was no load management going on like you hear about the NBA, trying to limit the exposure of Kelce. Kelce, he showed up every game day. Every game day he showed up with a purpose, a passion. And I remember some of the games where he had some really good games where we lost the game. And before we did our post-game show, we'd go over to him and say something, hey, man, hey, great job. No, hey, Barber, that wasn't good enough. And I was like, man, like he's already starting to break down his own performance. The one that got away, the one that got off my hands, or the fumble, or something like that, breaking it down. What does he need to do from being good to great, from being great to elite? And I think like we saw his mentality coming in and during training camp, working on the finer tune, the little nuances that late in the season him and Pat was able to rely on. Even when he was covered, Pat threw him open so many times where defensively you just got to throw your hand. Like if you're a defensive coordinator, you have a perfect call. You got the inside leverage. You're taking it away, and Pat just rainbows it or just teardrops it to an outside shoulder, hits Kelce right in stride over the top of your defense, and they're going down the sideline. And it's nothing. You can't do anything about that. It's nothing. Great throw, great catch. You just want to line up and get another set of downs. But he was able to do that so many times in the postseason. Every time we needed a big play, every time our offense needed a little bit of a jolt, a little bit of momentum, Kelce just showed up time and time again. So like you said, to put a stamp on, if there was any doubt before this playoffs, who was the best tight end in the NFL, I think the playoffs spoke for themselves. The Chiefs kept moving on. Our tight end position dominated defenses time and time again. And while everybody was trying to stop Pat Mahomes and Sammy Watkins and Tyreek Hill from getting beat over the top, our offense was patient enough, poised enough, taking first down, and then beat you for the touchdown.
I know the division's trying to figure out how to beat Patrick Mahomes. They're sitting in personnel meetings, how do we put our roster together to beat him? This isn't an arrogant statement. It's what we've done. We've been on the other side of this, right, with Elway and others. But I'm guaranteeing you, in that same discussion, they're talking about how do we put our roster together to slow down Travis Kelce? Because you mentioned it early in this podcast, and that is you have to have a unique person defensively or a scheme to cover Travis Kelce. And even then, Shop, it's not good enough.
So many times, I'm telling you, if we go back and watch that film, and so many times I'm looking at Kelce and I'm seeing Pat look at him and say, okay, he's not open. He's going to go someplace else. He throws it to Kelce anyway, and Kelce just, at the top of his routes, he does a little jiggle, a little something to create a small 6-inch window. And by God, if that ball does not fall right on that 6-inch window, right in Kelce's lap, and like you said, those 3 touchdown game, late in the down, and he's finding a little hole, a little place to set down in the zone, and Pat just like a 3-point shot, just throws it in there right into the hoop, and Kelce catches for a touchdown in that Houston game. It's phenomenal the way they kind of think on the same page. Mm-hmm. Even after plays begin, they think they see something, the defense change. Them two are already on the same page. They are locked in step on what adjustments need to make for him to get open. And then Pat has the confidence and the arm to get the ball where it needs to be. You just don't find that combination anywhere. And even if the tight end does have the skill level at some of these other places, you got to start to look at the quarterback position. Is he skilled enough, confident enough to get the ball there? And then the places that have a quarterback that is skilled enough, Well, do they have the tight end that can run the routes and get open consistently? It's always something missing. But here in Kansas City, we got both elements, both components, and it allows our offense to consistently hit on all cylinders.
Yeah, and I saw that in July before anybody showed up at training camp. What you talked about, there was 72 hours. Those two guys worked and worked and worked and worked, and they got in each other's brain, mind, and soul. And it's just a devastating combination with Travis Kelce and with Patrick Mahomes. But we also see, and I gave you back at the beginning of the podcast, all of these percentages and what these tight ends mean to some of the top quarterbacks in the National Football League. We're at halftime of this particular podcast. You know how it works, 12 minutes for an NFL halftime. You get a second. There, good. And now we enter the second half of this discussion as we refit the backpack, get ready to climb the mountain, talk about the tight ends. And as we've done with the other position groups in the first 3 weeks of this series, we're going to dive into the crockpot guys. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to include the guys that right now aren't on the roster. They're considered free agents. And that includes the two guys that were on the roster throughout much of the year, if not all the year. Blake Bell, the Wichita native, Deion Yelder. For Blake Bell, I thought he played his best football in the postseason. He got his first ever touchdown ever against the Houston Texans. That prompted, it was so big, it prompted Fisher's celebration, which has now become a thing of folklore. But I thought Blake Bell played his best football in the postseason.
No, he definitely did. He showed so much growth. We knew what we had, right? He had 4 or 5 years under his belt. He came here. Hey, you're going to back up Kelce. You're going to do some red zone blocking, run block a little bit. Make sure that when they focus on Kelce, maybe hit you with a little screen here and there. But, you're not going to be a featured offense. He took those opportunities to learn from Kelce. Learning his footsteps, his footwork, learning his releases, learning how to high point balls and how to find soft spots and sit down in the zone, learning when to run away from man and things like that, and just paying attention to what was going on in this environment, this atmosphere. There's no greater experience for a player, I think, to be kind of lost in some other teams, whereas Jacksonville, Miami, lost in a team like Cincinnati that hasn't won games for a decade. And how hard it is to come in every week, go to work, put in that same amount of intensity, go out there expecting to win, get disappointed, and got to do it again for 16, 17 weeks and another season without ever feeling the joy of victory. And then you come here to Kansas City and the air is, hey, man, let your personality show. Play fast, play aggressive. Hey, learn your position, learn where you're supposed to line assignment football. Go make plays. And then being in an offense with a guy that can actually get you the ball on stride, that understands defenses to the point where he's not going to lead you into big hits and lead you into getting your head taken off and stuff like that. So the trust level between the tight end position and the quarterback position is outstanding here. So to be a part of that and now have opportunity to decide whether you want to test free agency or come on back to what you know is a good thing, put another year of successfulness in this kind of offense under your belt. I think going forth, when we talk about the longevity of his career, the smart move for him might be to come back to God's country and come out back on to Kansas City and get a little bit more of that Mahomes magic before he hits free agency.
And he is a Wichita native. He played at Bishop Carroll High School. I say that a lot during their play-by-play, but he is home. This is his home. Now, crockpot guys. Last week we talked about linebacker and how linebacker can be crockpot guys, and same with the offensive line. Now, when we say crockpot guys, it's not a derogatory term. It's actually a compliment because teams think enough of you, they keep you around and pay you to develop you. Okay, in this position on the practice squad at tight end, David Wells, Alize Mack, Nick Kaiser's been around for a while, kind of a practice squad guy, and then John Lovett is really interesting to me. Good preseason last year, was a Princeton quarterback. Is he a fullback? Is he a tight end? Well, maybe he's both. But to me, of the crockpot guys, all of them deserve discussion. But to me, John Lovett is a name that Chiefs fans have forgotten about. And they're going to see him at camp next year going, oh, that's the dude. Because he got hurt last year in the preseason and had to go to the crockpot.
Yeah, you say that name, and I just remember that number 40 catching that little like a little flat route and turning it up the sideline and
right
showing people he could run with the ball. And I asked you when we talked about him, hey man, what position is he? Ex-quarterback. It's so when you have ex-quarterbacks, the playbook opens up because they understand philosophy so much. They understand the fundamentals of blocking schemes and protection schemes. And so instead of those guys going out and just learning their position and trying to figure out their position, they already have such a great starting point because they are ex-quarterbacks. And so when you get ex-quarterbacks on your roster, it opens up the fake plays. It opens up the wildcat plays because they're comfortable with the ball. On special teams, being an up back, running fakes. Now he's a tight end, so he catches the ball well. So he's one of those utility knives. I think we've seen Taysom Hill with the Saints be that same kind of personnel where you just never know where they're going to line up. And it's sometimes such a slippery slope on defense, thinking about when that guy lines up in a position that's not natural, what is the offense trying to do? And when it gets your mind thinking about that, then they hit you with a basic play for 10, 15 yards. Yeah. And with John Lovett, man, we saw him. He started to pick up some momentum before the injury, and it's going to be so exciting. We talk about that crock pot, just to let him boil, let him bake a little bit during the offseason, lift some weights, get strong.
A little simmer going on.
Yeah, that simmer going on.
Some seasoning.
Build up that pro body. Build up so he can be impervious to soft tissue injuries and some of those little nicks and knacks that sometimes hold young guys back. And now he understands the pace of play and the pace of practice. He's going to be one of Coach Tobe's tip of the spear guys. He's going to be a four core teams guy. That position is very valuable to a team that we know is going to have to make some budgeting issues, some budgeting cuts to get everybody under that 53-man roster.
Your Chase and Hill analogy for John Lovett is an interesting one. Secondly, to your point, Travis Kelce was a former quarterback. And yes, we ran wildcat plays to him, throw the ball, do all kinds of stuff. So these former quarterbacks that turn into tight ends are almost like the former college basketball players. Honest to goodness, I do a lot of college basketball, not as much as I used to. But when I go out to do these games, I'll kid you not, I'm as serious as I can be. Because even there's times the scouting staff has said, go watch Barber at the University of Richmond, a big kid. Tell me what you think. I'll be looking for a tight end.
Oh, man.
I'm serious. And I'll see a kid, and I'll check out with their strength and conditioning, and I'll try to watch their feet and see how they move, and then I'll go ask, does he have the mentality you think he'd want to give it a try?
Yeah.
And we saw Rico Gathers at Baylor.
Yes, he did.
Ended up with the Dallas Cowboys. We kind of joke and say ha-ha, but it's a serious thing to find these guys that can become tight ends. Now, the division. This is a really good tight end division. Not only is there Travis Kelce, but Darren Waller of Oakland, 1,145 yards last year on 90 catches. So he was not that far off the pace of Kelce. In fact, he was right there. And then you look at Noah Fant, perhaps in Denver, who's developing. Hunter Henry, I know, is a free agent with the Chargers, but I'll be stunned if they don't re-sign him. Now, these are all those guys that are good, could be great, using your adjective from the beginning of the podcast. But the division, to me, is trying to also find the next Kelce.
Oh, definitely. And so you got some other free agents that could, evolve in that role. You got Jordan Reed and Eric Ebron and Tyler Eifert. We didn't talk about Austin Hooper yet, Darren Fells. The old man Jason Witten, right? He's trying to kind of rebirth of Slick, trying to bring his career back. So everybody is constantly kicking the tires on these tight ends to see if they can find a little bit of spark, a little bit of magic, because everybody understands how important that tight end position is to making that offense go. And when you got quarterbacks, we put so much pressure on them to understand and see everything. If they don't have a release valve, if they don't have somebody they can know, whether you got Kelce covered or not, there's always a place to throw the ball that he can come down and catch the ball. It's always a good throw if you throw it in his direction. And I think that we talk about Trent Green, talk about the quarterbacks I played with. Tony Gonzalez, in all the years he played here, he would tell you he was never not open. Now, whether there was a defender between him and the quarterback or not, that might have been a situation. That might have been something to talk about. But there was always a area that Tony Gonzalez feels like even when you're covering him, you can throw it a little bit higher or throw a back shoulder. He had great enough hands to go down low. And he says the one thing he realized when somebody was guarding him man to man, if you're looking at him, you ain't got him covered. because he'll catch the ball before you can break it up. And so unless you got your eyes on that quarterback, and then when you look at the quarterback, he's able to stop and reroute. And so he's man, just stay with me. I'm always open. And the only reason he wasn't is when the pass rush get to the quarterback. That's the only way you cover great tight ends consistently is the pass rush has to get to the quarterback, make them uncomfortable so they can't throw it where they want to throw it.
The mathematician says catch radius. That's what I always hear. Catch radius is what you're, that whole
wingspan,
wingspan, and Kelce's got it. Gonzalez had it, and the great tight ends have it. You bring up a point. Darren Fells of Houston, to me, is a very interesting player. Another guy that's on that free agent list right now is Michael Pruitt of Tennessee. Mm-hmm. So he's kind of in that category of that next level of guy. And again, the 3 tight end system, Big Red will use that too. He kind of revolutionized it back in 2014 out of necessity. That's the first year really that Kelce came alive, but the Chiefs would run that accordion tight end set where there's one on the line of scrimmage, one on the hip of the guy on the line of scrimmage, and one on the hip of the hip. And so don't think that Big Red won't pull that out at some time and mess with somebody in that regard. We enter the fourth quarter of this podcast, our Defending the Kingdom podcast, refitting the backpack for the 2020 climb up the mountain, and looking at tight ends. Now let's talk and finish with what the college game is providing.
Yes.
There is a good list of guys here that could be available in the later rounds, some in the first, maybe at 32nd when the Chiefs pick if they stay put. A guy named Cole Kmet at Notre Dame. Had a good combine. He's kind of rising up the board. I'm just going to go through guys here. Hunter Brown of Washington struggles as a blocker, but he's more of that receiving tight end. Jared Pinkney of Vanderbilt had a slow run at the combine. A flex tight end, the guy you've talked about throughout this podcast. Harrison Bryant of Florida Atlantic. Then there's Okubeyu, the kid from Missouri, Albert O. They call him Okuebu Hum. But a kid that's, been interesting. His speed, question is, can he, be an effort? And then there's a small school kid, Adam Troutman from Dayton.
Yeah.
Dayton plays non-scholarship football. They're in the Pioneer League. They're not with you guys in the Atlantic 10 with this awesome basketball team they've got. They had a really good Senior Bowl, did not run well at the Combine. I just gave you a list of guys that the college game is producing. What is the college game producing at this position that the NFL needs so desperately?
Well, I think it's creating guys that come in ready to play. They come in with an understanding of what the spread offense looks like, what it's like to be ultra versatile. You have to have a skill set of blocking. You have to have a great base. You have to be able to hang on to tackle's hip and block an elite pass rusher. You got to be able to block an end with you and a running back both together and keep them off a quarterback from killing your quarterback. You got to be able to control the safeties. Like I said, you got to be able to control the safety in the middle of the field. You got to run some precise routes. You got to have a feeling of when the route's over and how to create an exit path and a release valve for your quarterback. You have to do all of those things. But you got to also realize that, half the time your back's going to be turned to the defense. And you got to be able to take a licking. You got to be able to take some of those hits and get up. Some of the greatest, most proudest moments I had of Travis Kelce this season was when he got lit up a few times and he kept getting up. Kept getting up, answering the bell is what you call it. Never tapping himself out. Always wanted to be in there when it was in the red zone, in the fourth quarter, right before halftime. Whenever it's the most important times, he never checked himself out of the game. And so that kind of mental toughness, I think we're seeing more and more, and we're just seeing more athletes. These guys we all mentioned are all great athletes, and they're all 6'4", 6'5", 250 pounds, and they run like linebackers. They're all 4'8" guys, 5'0" guys, and they're able to really stretch the seams, put a lot of pressure on your defense going up the seams with your safeties and your linebackers. But then you also get guys. We got a couple of wide receivers. A guy like Chase Claypool, right? A big oversized wide receiver who, if you look at his frame, you give him a couple looks. Yeah, you can put 10, 20 more pounds back on that frame. He wouldn't lose too much speed. He has great hands, great, like you said, catch radius, awesome eye for the ball, can be an awesome red zone target. So you start thinking about things you can do with him, and he's not a top 10, top 15 wide receiver, so he'll be available in the third round. All these tight ends will be available in the second and third round. So you don't have to even you don't have to trade up for these. These guys are going to fall into your lap. And when you feel like they fell enough down the draft board that their skill level demands for you to take them. If you look at our team, we are going to be thin at the tight end position. We have so many free agents right now. Right, Kelce's the only one under contract, so we got to build through the ranks. And so grabbing one of these tight ends late in the rounds, third or fourth round, would not be something I see as that out of the scenario for the Chiefs draft strategy.
I'm going to give you now. We're going to talk about wide receivers in a couple of weeks here, but a kid named Jody Fortson.
Yes, sir.
That's who fits what you just talked about. Maybe fitting the frame. We're now a big wide receiver, big bone kid who's listed as a wide receiver. To me, looks more like it could be a tight end type.
Yes.
Over time. So we'll just tease that one for the wide receivers. But next week, we're going to go to maybe not the strongest position of the team. We know quarterback is there. But on the defense, the safety group. And what an exciting group that is, and what they did to lead the Chiefs to the Super Bowl. All right, Shop, here we go with tight ends. We know how important they are to the National Football League. We love ours in the Chiefs Kingdom. But just know this, everybody in the NFL is looking for the next, and as you said, great tight end. He's Shawn Barber, a.k.a. The Shop, a.k.a. The Spider-Man, a.k.a. The Barbershop. I'm Mitch Holthus, voice of the Chiefs. Next week, we're going to refit the backpack some more and talk about one of the strongest positions on the roster, the safety position.
Thanks for listening to the Chiefs Official Podcast Network.
10, 5, touchdown! Lock it down! And the celebration begins at Arrowhead.